Listen, what we have facing us coming up this year is critical to the future of the country. I think we all know that. We've been able to change this country with virtually no money, because that's not what it takes. It takes resolve, it takes people who want to work hard, and it takes that eternal vigilance. So like this.
All right, folks, thanks for coming tonight. I know it's a cold night, tough night to be out. I didn't realize how cold it was, but I know now. I'd like to start, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Yeah, we haven't met for a couple of months because I guess we took off for the Christmas party, and I think that was a good idea. All right, get everybody back going. And the New Year came and gone, and the holidays were over. We had a great Christmas party, by the way. If you missed it, don't miss it next time. It was really pretty good. And I think for the last couple of meetings, if you've been here before, you know I usually have a hard time trying to come up with good things to report. But believe it or not, by the end of the night, I think we'll have a couple of good things to report. And I'll get to some of those a little later. One of the issues we always have had, obviously, is the big arm of the federal government, state governments coming down and, you know, basically telling us all what to do here at the local level. I know a lot of you know that I spent a couple of years on a school board over here and chairman of the finance committee, trying to get budgets under control, things like that. Every time I looked at one of the superintendents and I said, what do we have this program doing here? We don't have any students that want to be in it. We don't have any of those economic conditions that it was designed to measure. We don't have English as a 15th language. Okay? All they would do is look at me in a straight face and say, Steve, there's nothing I can do about it. It's a state mandate. Hands are tied. And for years and years and years, that's all I ever heard from these people. My hands are tied. The state has come in and mandated that we do this. And of course, they hardly ever paid either. They used to mandate and let us pay. So they'd sit up there in Albany, they'd dictate down to local districts, municipalities, other taxing jurisdictions, and tell them how to do business. They got the tab. You all did. Because that's the way they do business up there. Well, it's got to change. And there's a movement on the way right now to change it. And I have a special guest here tonight that I want to come discuss this. You all remember Steve Levy, the ex-Suffolk County executive? Yeah. Come on up, Steve. Steve was pretty good at balancing budgets, but he also ran into some of those state mandates himself, which made it kind of difficult to balance those budgets. But he's doing something about it. And right now, he's the organizer and founder of an organization called the, what's it called? The Center for Cost-Effective Government.
Did I have more on? I know.
That's right. Imagine that, right? Cost-effective government. All right. Good luck with that one, Steve. But listen, we were up in Albany yesterday, and I think we took some of the first shots under Steve's direction to get a handle on some of these state mandates, or at least to raise it as an important issue. It has a lot to do with local control, but mostly it has to do with dollars and cents. Steve.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, and thank you very much for having me. I want to tell you that Steve represented the CSA amazingly yesterday. Fantastic speech. When I introduced him to some of the folks up there in Albany, I said, we have with us the leader of the CSA who's going to talk about mandates. Steve grabbed the mic and said, now let me explain, this is not the CSEA, it's the CSA. What is somebody from the CSEA doing up there fighting mandates? They're all about mandates. But he was fantastic, and I'll tell you a little about what we're doing. Before that, I want to thank Steve for having me here today to spread this news as to what we're doing, but also to let me go on early. I'm going to be jotting out somewhat quickly tonight. I normally like to stay for much of the night, but the radio program that I'm affiliated with now, they're having a little gathering tonight, like an open forum for some of our guests. If you haven't heard it already, it's Long Island News Radio. It's 103.9 on your dial, formerly WRCN. It's like a mid or a hard rock station. It reaches out to about exit 51 on the LIE, so this is about its border. But the great thing about it is it's pretty much right of center radio, because you know, the liberals tried talk radio and they felt like a lead balloon. And why is that? It's because they control the mainstream media. So you don't have to go off of the mainstream media to get your liberal perspective. The reason why Fox News excels and talk radio excels is because if you're fed up with the mainstream media, you want an outlet. So you go to that conservative radio, you go to Fox. That's why MSNBC gets no ratings. That's why Air America died. You don't have to go there. Just watch the mainstream media and you'll get all the liberal news that you want. So anyway, it's a great station. I do a show live on Saturdays from 2 to 4. And you're all welcome to listen in. Steve's done a show with us before. It's a live call-in show. Sometimes we're preempted by the Islanders, but for the most part, we're on and they repeat a few times throughout the day. But that's where I'll be right after this to mix and mingle with some of our guests at that spot. It's right in MacArthur Airport, by the way. If you haven't seen it already, you go to the baggage claim, you pick up your bags, and there's this glass booth, LI News. So good talk radio, long overdue. We need it. We have 3 million people here on Long Island, and I love to listen to Hannity. I love to listen to Rush and all those others. It gives you a perspective on the news. But they're talking about national issues, and that's great. And I like to talk about national issues too. But they're not going to talk about what's happening in the Suffolk County Legislature, or for the most part, what's happening in Albany. Unless Cuomo makes a stupid remark that conservatives aren't allowed to live in New York, and then it becomes national news. But let me tell you what we're doing. As you know, when I was in county government, and I spent 3 years in Albany as well as a legislator, my big thing was all about spending. My motto was, all the programs in the world don't mean a hill of beans if you can't afford to live here in the first place. And the way I crafted my budgets was under the motto that you have to say no to the things you want so that you can say yes to the things that you need. And as a result, we took a $238 million deficit and turned it into a surplus. We actually cut spending from the previous year 3 times in my administration. It was never done once prior to my administration. The budget that I left them in 2012 was lower than the 2008 budget. So we did what we had to do. We did a lot of slicing and dicing. But I'll tell you, it got really tough at the end, because after the crash of the fall of 2008, we were left with no money. There was no money coming in, the revenues were shot, and yet the mandates kept on piling up and piling up. To give you an example, we would nickel and dime to try to get $50,000 or $100,000 cut from a particular program just to save the money. And wham, we'd be hit with a $45 million increase in our pension costs. In 1 year. Not the bill, the increase alone in 1 year. Followed the next year by another $45 million. The pension costs are doubling every 4 or 5 years. It's unsustainable. We're going to fall off a cliff. It's very similar to Social Security. When they developed this wonderful program way back when in the 30s, you had 16 workers for every 1 retiree. Now you have 3 to 4 workers for every 1 retiree. Doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that math is not going to add up all the time, and you're going to have to do something to get control of this for the long term. Now the special interests that are out there, they push back on everything. And the point Steve and I and others have been trying to make, and in our Center for Cost-Effective Government, especially to the workers themselves, is that you have to cooperate with us, you have to work with us, and we have to get some kind of reasonable compromise here, because it's for your own good. Because if you don't, and you think this gravy train is going to last forever, you know what you're going to be? You're going to be Greece. You're going to be Detroit. What happened in Detroit? The pensioners took it on the chin just like the bondholders did. They kept on spending and promising and spending and promising to buy votes, and then the whole system collapsed. And you're seeing that in municipalities and cities around the country. San Bernardino, California went bankrupt. Scranton, a city down in Mississippi. It's happening over and over and over again. And we're not immune to it here in New York State. In fact, there's a vast number of municipalities that are on the brink of disaster. Why is that? Well, there's about 4 major mandates that are pushing these costs up. One is pension. Why? Well, the way the public sector pension system works is much different than the private sector. If you have a pension at all in the private sector, it's what we call a defined contribution system. You put a little bit in, the employer matches it, and then it grows or falls with the market, and you hope you have enough to keep yourself going throughout the years. In the public sector, much different. It's a guarantee for the employee. It's called defined benefit. So what they do, they put a little bit in as an employee, the employer matches it, not too much there, and then they wait for the market to help it grow. They guarantee about a 7.5% return every year to go back into that kitty. Now what happens if it's a year like 2008 or 9 when the market is not going up 7.5%, it might only be going up 2 or 3% or maybe going down by 10%. Well, guess what? In the public sector, the defined benefit program still locks in the guarantee of 7.5%, and who makes up the difference? You do, the taxpayer. And that's why these costs have been exploding, and they're gobbling up budgets. So what our center has called for, along with the CSA and many other fiscally conservative groups, is change this system before it collapses. And all we're saying, everyone's entitled to a pension, but just mirror what's in the private sector. Now, we're not even saying that those that are in the system now have to change. Actually, it's very difficult to do constitutionally in the state of New York to change a person's pension once they already have it. But we're saying, at least just for the new people coming in, if you're hired tomorrow, you no longer have that defined benefit system. And for the elected officials, when you come in, you do not get that defined benefit system anymore. You have a defined contribution. Now, the other reason that the costs are so high is because it's not just the base salary upon which you base the pension cost, okay? Let's take a police officer's salary, for instance. Okay? With mandatory arbitration, which is another mandate that we're fighting, it has had this leapfrogging effect between Nassau and Suffolk County. So the arbitrator looks to Nassau and says, oh, they just got a 4% increase, I'm giving Suffolk a 5%. And then it goes back and forth and up and down. And that's why you had a situation where Nassau and Suffolk police officers were making twice as much as city officers. They didn't have arbitration. They have it now, so you're going to see that gap narrow. City cops were capping out at what Suffolk cops were starting at. Okay? I changed that. We brought down the starting salary from 57 grand to 42. Okay? But the arbitrators give away the store. So now with this latest arbitration award, it wasn't an award, the latest deal that the current county executive did with the PBA, you're going to have a $200,000 police officer by the time the contract has expired. But it gets worse. What they do, and it's not just the PD that does this, and by the way, I love our police officers, they do a wonderful job, one of the safest places in America, right here, thank God, God bless them. It's not the police officer, it's the union that we're fighting. It's the excessive, crazy perks and salary and benefits that aren't commensurate with the real world. And very few people will take them on because it's such a tough special interest. But what they do is they build up the overtime in those last couple of years. So the base salary might be 130 grand. By the time you're done throwing in all the night differential, another 9 or 11% extra, and the overtime, they could be leaving with a $225,000 salary. That's how you get a pension of $150,000. It's out of control. And we're saying that has to stop. You base the pension on your base pay, not the overtime that really doubles the base pay. Again, simply unsustainable. Nobody wants to talk about it. Our group does, this group does, and we went up to Albany with a busload of folks, and we made our point yesterday. But those weren't the only two things. The other thing we hit upon was the dreaded tri-borough amendment. Many of you might have heard of this, many of you might not have. Let me explain to you what it is. It affects all government employees, and particularly teachers. And what it basically says is this: when the contract expires, the salaries continue, reasonable. Just because your contract expires and you're in negotiation doesn't mean you shouldn't get paid for your work. It's reasonable. It says that you keep your benefits, reasonable. It says that you're not going to lose your overtime, your vacation, reasonable. Where we part company is the provision that says you even get your step increases after the contract has expired. What's a step increase, many of you might ask? It's a bonus raise for simply living another year. That's what it comes down to. That's what it is. So if you're in the public sector, you not only get the 2 or 3% raise or 4% that you negotiated from the union and management, you get another 3 or 4% step increase, which really doubles your salary almost. And in fact, the Empire Center for Public Policy in New York, which is a wonderful agency that an offshoot of the Manhattan Institute, the very fiscally conservative watchdog. E.J. McMahon is the head, and they do great work. They published a report just Monday, and it showed that despite the fact that enrollment has declined since 2001, there's been a 40% increase in pay of teaching staff and the professionals within our schools. The median income right now, the median salary for a Long Island teacher is now exceeding $100,000 a year. Median. That means half are below and half are above. You know, your newcomers coming in, they might be making, 50, 60, 70. You've been in there a little while, you're well over 100. Some way more than that, okay? But the Triborough Amendment has been responsible for this in large part. The worst part about this is that when the contract expires, the union has zero incentive to negotiate with you as management. They're not going to give anything back. Why should I give something back to you? I can just go on like this forever. My members get their salary, they get their vacation, they get their benefits, and they're getting a step increase, even though the contract expires. Why would I give back anything to you? And it's not just the county executive who felt that. Every superintendent and school board feels that. We're trying to get rid of it. And by the way, cruel for trying to get rid of this? No, we're just trying to mirror every other state in the union that doesn't have this nonsense. Only in New York. Why is it New York always in financial problem? Because it has a liberal legislature that can't control its spending. What are the other states that are on the precipice of disaster? California, Illinois, what do they all have in common? They have liberal spending legislators that are in control. What are the states that are in good shape? Wisconsin has turned it all around thanks to a guy like Scott Walker. Okay? Same thing with Ohio, with John Kasich, okay? And even Jersey, Christie might be having his troubles right now, but he put into effect a lot of changes that have straightened them out in Jersey. And speaking of what he did that we're trying to do, he put a cap on the arbitration awards. They were the first ones with the 2% property tax cap, and God bless them, and we mirrored that. But thereafter they said, look, if we got a 2% property tax cap that we have to live within, then limit these crazy salary increases on law enforcement. So limit the arbitration awards to 2% as well. They got it done in Jersey. Here in New York, they talked about it, they talked a good game, it never happened. That's part of our plan too. What you've been seeing in New York is this shell game. The governor, I gotta give him credit for this. He identifies the problem very well. Okay, and legitimate credit because a lot of other governors wouldn't talk about it. He at least talks about it. Yeah, we got pension problems. We gotta resolve this. Yeah, we got this problem with arbitration. We have to resolve it. Yeah, we got problems with this. We have to resolve it. So what does he do? Does he do a Scott Walker? Does he do a Chris Christie and actually get it done? No, he appoints a panel. He appoints a commission. And he stacks it with some people who are fiscally conservative, but then he puts the union on the panel that is supposed to come back to us with a suggestion to do away with all of these perks that have built them up for all these years. It's not going to happen. So the so-called pension reform that they said they did a couple of years, it was window dressing, it was a press release, it was tinkering, it was nonsense. They didn't really do anything. They basically said, you know, yeah, we're going to limit overtime going into the pension, but just for the new employees. So that's 20, 30 years that before you'll have an impact. In the meantime, we'll go broke, because every year you'll continue to have these guys going out with $250,000 salaries and getting $150,000 pension. We can't wait for that. We need the response now. Arbitration, yeah, we're going to fix that. Put a panel together. They did absolutely nothing. So they build up the hope by talking a good game and then don't carry it out. Now, when he wants to get something done, whether it was gay marriage or whether it was the Second Amendment change they did, he got it done in a hurry. Okay? So he can get it done where he wants to get it done. And we'll go to the wall. We saw how vigorous the governor was when it came to getting that gun control bill through. You know, get out of the way, we're doing it now. I'd love to see him do that with mandatory arbitration. I'd love to see him do that with the pension problem we face, or the Tri-Bow Amendment. His words were the Tri-Bow Amendment is dead on arrival in Albany. It's our job to make sure that ain't so. So what we did in our Center for Cost-Effective Government, we've been identifying the problem for the public to let them know these are the drivers of your costs going up, along with one more being disability payments, which are really starting to go out of control as well. There are a lot of legitimately hurt people out there who have to be protected and cared for, but there's a lot of fraud as well. And the line that gets me the most, the fact that gets me the most, is that over a 5-year period since 2009, more people went on Social Security disability than got jobs in this country. That's scary. Food stamps have doubled. You know, we know all this, how we're becoming an entitlement society. One of the reasons here in New York is you have a law that gives a presumption that if you are a fireman or a police officer, again, God bless them for the work they do, but the presumption is if you have a heart or a lung ailment, that it was work-related. Now, if it was, let's protect those people and take care of them and their families. But why should you presume that? Once it's presumed, it's awfully hard to win that case if you are management. And how many of you heard about just 2 weeks ago? You know, 100 people were arrested for scamming the system. I'm not even talking about the Long Island Railroad now. I'm talking about 100 more people. You know what their claim was for disability, which they did get? Stress. Who doesn't have stress? Who doesn't have, who's over 45 or 50 doesn't have a backache and stress? Okay? Yeah, you know, I'm stressed. You know, let me go out on disability. Because how do you quantify that? It is so abused, it is absolutely ridiculous. And they have a cottage industry of the lawyers and the doctors that keep priming this pump, and it's really starting to bankrupt us. So that's where we're going with the Center for Cost-Effective Government. We've got a champion, thank goodness. And that champion is Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick, who hails from this area. He might represent many of you here. That's great. You know, the downside is Mike is an assemblyman in a minority. So a minority assemblyman's bill is not going to get to the floor. But what's good about this is Mike had the guts to put this on paper and to codify it so that we can shop this around now. I am so tired of hearing from state senators and state assemblymen saying, we've got to fight those mandates and I'm going to support a bill that stops unfunded mandates. Well, that's not really a bill. There's no bill out there that says we're going to stop unfunded mandates. You've got to have a specific bill that takes on these special interests. When you do that, they all go running away. Okay, because now you try to take on a Tri-Bow Amendment, you're going to have the teachers union coming after you. You try to take on mandatory arbitration, you're going to have the PBA coming after you. You try to deal with these disability claims, you're going to have the fire union coming after you. I'll take your questions in a second. But that's what we see. It's a brave man like Mike Fitzpatrick that will put it on paper. So what are we doing? We're starting the walk. It might be a mile that we have to walk, but you have to take those first steps. And it starts with this bill that our center helped craft for Mike, or with Mike, and he introduced it just yesterday. So now we need you all to call your senator. You know, luckily we have a lot of Republican senators here on Long Island who have clout. We need one of those guys to sign up on this bill and carry it. Then you're going to see the momentum take off. We really, really need that. Now, when we did our press conference and when we talked to the press over the last couple of weeks, the first reaction we get is, well, you don't have a Senate sponsor, and you don't have a Democrat in the Assembly. It's going nowhere. And I respond to them this way. When we introduced the tax cap several years ago, they said it couldn't be done. You're wasting your time, you're tilting at windmills, you're running in place, it'll never happen. We made it happen. Okay? It started from the grassroots up, and we forced change. Years ago, maybe over 10 years ago, we had Medicaid going out of control. They said we'd never get a Medicaid cap on the local level. We made it happen. So we can do this, but it starts with you. It starts with you putting the heat on our representatives to get them to put their name on this bill. So now we don't have to have this nebulous test as to whether an official is for us or against us when it comes to mandates. We've got the bill, and you're either for it or you're against it. And if you put your name on the bill, we know you're going to support the taxpayer. If you're going to run away from it with any, you can come up with a million excuses to not support it, then we know where you really stand and who you're giving priority to, and it's those special interests. And then we have a few side resolutions as well. One of them being that if you're a public employee, you have to contribute something to your health insurance. If you're in a private sector, you're paying a boatload if you have health insurance from your employer. It might be 15%, it might be 25%, it might be more. But in the county, it's 0. Listen, one day I will be in this system, and I'll be a beneficiary of those great rules. But I'm the first to say, let me pay something into this. Let me pay a little. Why? Number one, I think it's the fair thing to do, but I'm a little selfish here too. I want to make sure I have it in 25 years or 20 years, God willing. So you got to give in a little bit that spreads it out and eases the pain for our average taxpayer. So that's where we're at. That's what our program is all about. That's what our center is all about. Anyone who would like to be part of this center and come to our meetings, you know, I'll inform Steve, or you can just write down, you know, the email. It's info@centerforcosteffectivegovernment.org. So it's Center for Cost Effective Government. That's the name of our organization. Just info@centerforcosteffectivegovernment.org, not .com. Okay. You send me your email. We'll put you on our list to let you know when we have our future meetings. Okay. So stay with us. Join us in this fight. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be short-lived. It's going to be a long haul. You have to start somewhere. We have great allies. We had Unshackle Upstate, which is a wonderful fiscally conservative group. We had the Conference of Mayors. We had a group in Westchester called Best for New York. We have We the People with Bob Schultz, who's one of the guys who brought the lawsuit to make sure that the school boards can't keep beating you over the head with vote after vote after vote. Remember those days? You'd go to the polls, you'd vote it down, they'd come back, you'd vote it down, they'd come back again, you vote it down. Can't do that anymore. In large part because of the good work of people from Long Island and that particular group. So they're our allies in this fight, okay? We're going to win this. It's going to take a while, but it starts here in meetings like this, and we're going to go all over the state to keep building the momentum. So on that note, I'm going to thank you very much for your time, and let's keep the fight. We're going to win, okay? Thanks.
I have a question about the Triborough amendment.
Yeah.
Is it an amendment to the New York State Constitution, or is it the name of the bill?
No, the Triborough would not be, okay? The Triborough doctrine was actually a lawsuit the tribal authority. It went back to like the 70s. And the correction officers had sued, and management actually won the court decision where steps were not allowed. But what happened? The liberal legislature came in with the amendment. They passed an amendment to overrule the court decision, which was on the side of the taxpayers. So that was in the 80s. That's the Triborough Amendment. The bill that we would pass would simply undo the act of the legislature in the 80s, which amended the court decision.
What's the name of the bill?
The name of the bill is the Taxpayer Mandate Relief Act. We actually have a number, and Steve would have it.
8603.
What is it?
8603.
8603. That's A,
Yeah,
8603.
the assembly bill.
A lot of the districts, I had a conversation with a business manager of the school district, and he was telling me that, this was about a year and a half ago, that 3 years they're not having money to pay all these top-heavy teachers, and they are not in a hurry to get out. And he was saying that 4 of them were making more money than him, and he was the guy that was writing the paychecks out. So I'm just wondering, are the unions kind of like in the state of denial? I mean,
Yes.
can't they see?
That is the, absolutely.
They can't see that the
Well, there's two things here. Yes, there's a denial, but there's also union politics. And union politics are thus. If you are a union leader, you like that union leadership job. It's a perk. You get a lot of perks that come along with it, okay? Especially, let's not talk teachers for a second, let's say in public works, you don't want to be on the payload or out in a day like today. You want to be the union leader who goes on the golf junkets, okay? So, your number one concern, even before your members, is winning your re-election to union leadership. The way you win re-election to union leadership is to give in on nothing, okay? And to keep on fighting for more and more and more in the short term. They don't look long term. They don't care what's going to happen 10, 15, 20 years from now. That'll be some other union leader's problem. They want to survive now. If they give up anything, the slightest thing, they may lose their cushy union leadership position. And that's the factual reality of it.
I just can't see them sustaining so many school districts.
No, what will happen is it will come down to a lot of these counties or cities come so close to bankruptcy that a control board is put in place, as was the case in Nassau County, as was the case, remember New York City in the 70s. Remember when they were going bankrupt? What happened? What saved them? The state came in and said, move aside, we're taking over your finances. The key element there is that once the state legislature authorizes a control board, they have the authority to undo the contracts. And that's what saves the city. In Detroit right now, you'd be asking, well, how did they cut the pensions? They didn't do it, the state came in. And the court came in and said, I'm treating this like I would a bankruptcy. All bets off. Those provisions within the contract are void, and we now have to do what we have to do. So who's getting it on the chin? The pensioners. The union guys who were betrayed by their leaders who just kept on thinking this will go on forever. And it's not going to go on forever. It's Greece, where they're fighting in the streets, and they still won't give in and do any kind of change, because any short-term change boots them out of their union leadership.
Last question over there?
Yeah, Steve, first of all, thank you for your efforts. We're all going to do the best we can to join in with that. And I realize you have to walk before you can run. Years ago, Mike Fitzpatrick, we sat down with him. He's been ringing this public sector defined benefit bell for a long, long time. And one of the things he said at a meeting when we sat down with him was, you know, what we need to really do is say, whatever you've been promised by law, okay, we're not going to take that away. We couldn't if we wanted to.
Right.
We're not even thinking about that. However, we're going to cut the line right here. I'm not talking about new hires. I'm talking about people who are on the salary right now. So whatever you've been defined based on what you've contributed, what you've been promised, based on your salary today, fine. We've capped it. That's it. Everything is a 401k from here on in. Is there any, I mean, that's the only way we're going to turn this around.
It makes sense, but the reason it's so difficult to do that is because court decisions have ruled that once you're in the system, not retired, but once you're in the system, there's a clause within the Constitution that can be interpreted many ways. It says your pension cannot be diminished nor impaired. Courts have interpreted that as meaning you cannot change the provisions of that person who's in now, which means they create a new tier only for the incoming person. Now, I draw the line where I say, well, that might pertain to what your basic pension rights are going to be, but it shouldn't pertain to overtime. There's nothing in the law saying you're entitled to have all this overtime. So we should stop that now for present employees, even if it takes a constitutional amendment to do it.
Because the pension spiking is insane. The last 3 years, whatever they do. I mean, that's why half these government agencies like the MTA exist, is for all these people, old
Yeah.
politicians, everybody goes there, gets their
You got it.
$250,000
And understand this
salary.
as well. In a lot of these unions, you have 20-year retirements, especially in law enforcement and fire. Now, you're 22. You join a police department. 42, you retire, okay? And sometimes over $100,000, because in those last couple of years, you built it up. So you're 42 with a $100,000 pension, okay? The taxpayer now has to hire your replacement. So he's in there. He then becomes 42. He retires. And the cycle goes on. By the time that first guy becomes 85 or so, God bless him if he's still around, the taxpayer is paying for 4 people for that one position. And by the way, you mentioned how it's going to be top-heavy in the school. Well, then what do they do? Well, let's do an early retirement program. Okay, get those high salaries out, and it sounds good. But let me tell you what they did in the 90s. Suffolk County did 10 early retirements in 9 years. And I was the only one saying no. I said yes to the first 1 or 2. Okay, that makes sense. They kept going and going. I said, hey, the chickens are going to come home to roost on this, folks. You keep on telling the top guys to go off, and all right, you replace them with a lower paid person, but you're now paying the pension on that other guy. So you're building the ranks of the pensioners, and you're paying for that new person, and that's what's happening. It's starting to overwhelm itself. It's collapsing. So be on the lookout for that one. That's the next thing they'll tell you. We're doing it early retirement. Look at all this money we spend saving. Baloney. In the long run, it costs you more. Yes, ma'am?
Those guys who retire at 42, go across the street and join the police department or become teachers or whatever, and then go another 20 years and get another pension?
Well, yes and no. You are, once you retire from a public pension position, you can go get a job anywhere you want and make as much as you want, except that you go back into the public sector. There is a cap of about $30,000. So you can work at another public sector job, but even if it offers you 100, you can only make 30, unless you get a waiver from the state, which is possible to do. But that's why most of these guys who retire, they go out and do construction or they do something like that. They really don't go back into another public sector job. Yes, Judy?
Is there a Senate complement bill?
No, that's the problem. And that's why we're asking everyone here to get your senator to mirror the Fitzpatrick bill, because it takes 2 to tango up in Albany. And we need that. That'll be a task, but you know what? They have no excuse. If they say no to this, you know, then they're really not for mandate relief. And by the way, I want to say, another part of the bill, it's a side bill, it would stop the 20-year retirement. It would require at the very least 25 years or, you know, and 50 years of age before you can retire. So it's not going to be a 42-year-old guy retiring $100,000 after 20 years of service. You know, so that's something we're looking to change as well. Taking on some big special interests on this, folks, but it's about time, right? Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Well, by the way, don't underestimate the power of having a bill on the floor. Because if the next time you're at your school board meeting, the next time you're at a town board meeting, the next time you're at the legislature, and somebody looks at you and says, you know, my hands are tied, because this has been mandated by the state, you have a question for that person. Are you going to support the bill to eliminate unfunded mandates in the state? Ask them. Put them on record. Put all these people on record. It's a chance for us to call their bluff. Because as I said, I spent those years on a school board with them just throwing their hands up in the air. Nothing I can do. No, there's nothing I can do. You know, that they stand behind it. And the reality is, despite what these superintendents tell you, they love mandates. They love mandates. That's their excuse. That's how they keep their departments. That's how they keep their employees. That's how they build their staffs. That's how they build their budgets. That's how the unions build their memberships. So the next time one of these people comes up there and says, oh, my hands are tied because of mandates, ask them what they've done to support the mandate relief bill. Put them on the spot. Next time you're at a school board meeting, try it, because I think it'll be very interesting for them. Anyway, we'll move on. It's very important that we get into that issue. We'll have more about that as we go forward. Uh-oh. Oh, wait a minute. Holy jeez, hold on, I gotta figure this machine out.
Take the mic out of your mouth. I work with him, trust me. It's not public work. We both mumble.
It's not just a machine, it's my eyes, hold on. All right, I had to get Steve in because he had, obviously, like you said, he had to move on to something else. All right? I wanted to start the meeting tonight to discuss some of the things going on in the last couple of weeks, and I know you're all aware of it, but it's kind of interesting. We all heard what our beloved governor had to say the other day, I guess, about who should live in New York State and who shouldn't. And for those who missed it, I'll play it. It's only 32 seconds. He says an awful lot in that time frame. Is that it?
Their problem is not me and the Democrats. Their problem is themselves. Who are they? Are they these extreme conservatives who are right to life, pro-assault weapons, anti-gay? Is that who they are? Because if that's who they are, and if they are the extreme conservatives, they have no place in the state of New York. The New York. Their problem is...
Yeah, move to California, that'll get you far. Well, it'll get you far, but we'll get you to move all the way to California. You know, it's interesting that you know, you have a governor that actually would have the nerve to say stuff like that. But of course, a lot of things are taken out of context. If you listen to the previous 2 minutes, you might get a different flavor for what it's all about. Basically, what he was doing, he was gloating. He's gloating about the fact that he's the governor of one of the most liberal states in the nation. Seriously. Because again, if you want to check it out, just go to the previous 2 minutes. He's talking about the state of the Republican Party, the state of conservatives. You know, and the conservatives, yeah, you know, they fight amongst themselves. The conservative wing of the Republican Party is bashing the moderates and all this kind of stuff. And he's right about that. He's right about that. We all know that there's a fight going on now for the moral high ground. We know that the conservatives in this country are fighting for a place that we can be heard. So he was reacting to that. But of course, he got so excited about the facts in New York State that he just couldn't help himself. So if you're pro-life, you like traditional marriage, and you happen to believe in the Second Amendment, there's no place for you in New York. Well, I kind of knew that. Aren't we going on a trip around? I know some people were taking rides to other states and things like that to see where we might end up. But in either case, it's just indicative of what's happening. We already know this in the state. But it's interesting that he would say something stupid like this that could be used against him, and it has been used against him. And if you look at some of the polls lately, you'll see that, you know, he's not very happy that he said that. But just keeping in context with that, maybe even more seriously. We have a governor, but we also have, oh geez, I'm sorry. I didn't mean I'm sorry we have a president. I mean, I'm sorry the video didn't come on. I'm sorry we have a president too. Okay.
We're all sorry about the president.
I'm really not technically challenged. It's just not my computer. It's someone else. Oh, there it is. Here we go. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the new Windows kind. Yeah, it's a little weird. Now, I know you heard this one also, but just in case you missed it.
In this meeting, is the fact that we are not just going to be waiting for legislation in order to make sure that we're providing Americans the kind of help that they need. I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward in helping to make sure our kids are getting the best education possible, making sure that our businesses are getting the kind of support and help they need to grow and advance, to make sure that people are getting the skills that they need to get those jobs that our businesses are creating. And I've got a phone that allows me to convene Americans from every walk of life, nonprofits, businesses, sector, universities, to try to bring more and more Americans together around what I think is a unifying theme, making sure that this is a country where if you work hard, you can make it. And so one of the things that I'm going to be talking to my cabinet about is how do we use all the tools available to us, not just legislation, in order to advance a mission that I think unifies all Americans. The belief that everybody's got to take responsibility, everybody's got to work hard. But if you do, that you can support a family and meet the kinds of obligations that you have to yourself and your family, but also to your communities and to your things that I'll be.
Now, of course, the key section there, and I know we all picked up on it, right? He fully intends to bypass the Congress of the United States. And he not only fully intends to, as in the future, but he already has. And one of the key provisions or one of the most obvious examples of that is even what he did with Obamacare. Maybe you got to pass it to see what's in it. Well, they passed it, and they saw what was in it. But the president and his administration unilaterally rewrote 12 whole sections of the law. Okay, the health care bill is not a policy, it's a law. Laws can only be passed by the Congress of the United States. It's the job of the executive branch to carry out the law, not to make the law. This president is making law and it's unconstitutional. And I'm personally getting sick and tired of the political people in this country who overlook those facts. He's acting in an unconstitutional manner. You know, we have members of Oath Keepers here and other people who took an oath to what? You take an oath to the Constitution. This president took an oath to the Constitution. Even though, if you recall, I think he got the Bible wrong. Remember that? That thing? He had to do the oath twice. He tried to sneak in a fake Bible. Well, I'm not sure that was intentional, but anyway. But the fact of the matter is, I've been asked this question by a lot of people, and I'll pose it to everybody out here. And one of those questions is this. If the president executes an illegal executive order that is clearly unconstitutional, do we have to follow that law?
No.
Does law enforcement have to enforce it?
No. We're obligated not to.
That's correct. That's correct. Where is the outrage on this issue? Where are the other elected people in this country? Where are the so-called members of the House of Representatives, the Senate, governors, and elsewhere to bring this issue up? Why are we the only ones that are offended by this? When it's clearly, obviously, and blatantly unconstitutional. You have an answer for me?
Actually, I've been asking and talking to a lot of people about this since I heard what he said. And to my great shock and dismay, most of the people that I've spoken to on Long Island think it's a great idea.
Yes, they do.
They think it's about time, and they think that they're much better off with a tyrant who's doing what they want than following the Constitution that prevents them from getting what they want.
You know what your answer is to somebody like that? Ask them if they'd have the same answer if the president was named George Bush. Ask them if they'd have the same answer when there's another president coming down the line who might be named Ted Cruz. You go back to those people, okay, who are saying things like that. Because if you want it this way, you'll have it this way. Now, I looked into executive orders, and just by the preponderance of the evidence, I mean, circumstantial maybe, but...
I did say that, because I did say that to
No, I'm sure you did. I understand what you're
They
saying.
say that we'll have to look at these things on a case-by-case basis.
I know. And if they agree with it, it's okay. And if they don't, they won't. I
Tear
understand.
apart the Constitution, but if
Yeah.
it's convenient and what you like, then we
Right.
can stomp on it a little.
Constitution,
The one thing-
guarantee between the people and
But
government.
this is
The
the
government
problem
violates
is-
it.
But listen, the
So
problem,
you have the right to
That's
not
right.
stand by it
That's
as well.
right.
I agree, but we can't just do that in this room, okay? Somewhere it has to be made a legal issue. Somebody's gonna have to bring a case. I don't know if the people have to bring a case. I don't know. Can the people of the United States sue the president? Congress has to, that's right. It's called impeachment.
57 states.
And they won't. I understand.
All 57 states should be
No, I know. But here's, folks,
Other states in Asia.
here's the point. The point is that we have to go back and talk about it. We have to bring it up as an issue. I looked into the number of executive orders. This president has instituted 570 plus executive orders. The last 5 presidents had an average number of executive orders of 15 to 20. And those were usually in the case of natural disasters, wars, actual emergencies, security issues and things like that, which really are constitutional and really are part of the job of a president of the United States. Butch.
Are you sure about those numbers? I was watching some conservative
Speak up, please.
talk show people on Fox News, and they were saying that he hasn't issued as many orders yet as George Bush issued while he was president.
That's not what I found. I'll share that with you if you'd like, because some people did research on that. It wasn't, because I was shocked also, because somebody actually asked me the question, and they asked me to take a rough guess. They said, well, how many executive orders do you think he actually did? My guess was about, I don't know, 60 to 70? I said, no. And then I asked for, I'll try and get you the list to you, all right? But the point is, whether it's 1 or 900, the areas with which he's doing it is not constitutional. You cannot write an executive order to invalidate a law passed by the Congress of the United States. Period. And he did it 12 times alone. So there's 12 right there, Bush. In just a health care bill. It's something that has to be dealt with. It's something we need to be aware of, and it's something we need to talk about. Now, getting on to the good news. The good news is that somehow these issues are starting to get out into the general population. Some people are starting to realize what's going on. Polls are showing that the president is not as popular as he used to be. And yes, even though there's those people who will go with the president no matter what, not all the numbers are there. They're starting to shrink. Another thing is happening. You know, we got a little bumper sticker in the back. Did you see that one? It says the Tea Party. We told you so. Okay? All this stuff coming out with, Obamacare and the lies and all this kind of stuff. You know, you have to read it to see what's in it. Now they're going to change it without due process of law. It's starting to sink in.
Where was Joe Wilson last night?
Now I also know that people like Mr. Chuck Schumer are extremely worried about what we are up to. And I'm going to play a little tape here of Mr. Schumer, who made a little speech last week in front of a bunch of his own people there. And he has a great plan on how to neutralize the Tea Party. Now, I'm going to play it for you. It's only about 8 minutes. But you get a little feel for what this guy is up to. And you might sense a little bit of the desperation that's going on. Try and listen to it carefully, because he's actually talking strategy and how he intends to offset any strides that we've made as a movement.
Weakness. One very weak link in the Tea Party's armor, which is an inherent contradiction within the Tea Party that I believe can be exposed to greatly weaken their hold on the policy debate. The fundamental weakness in the Tea Party machine is the stark difference between what the leaders of the Tea Party elite plutocrats like the Koch brothers want, and what the average grassroots Tea Party follower wants. To the plutocrats and their allies, government is indeed the enemy. These people are wealthy, hard-right, narrow, people who don't want to pay taxes, and don't want government interfering with their companies, no matter what damage their companies may do to their workers, or to the environment, or to anybody else. These are the people who say, I created my business all by myself. How dare your government tell me what to do with it?
Spoken by somebody who never held a job outside of government.
How dare your government try to take it away in taxes? To them, government is truly the enemy. Take government away, there'll be lower taxes, less regulation, and they, though certainly not America, will benefit. Of course, the plutocrats and their friends never acknowledge where government helped them. Government paved the roads and built the airports so they can ship their products. Government educated the workers that make their companies run and purchase their products. Government protected their rule of law and protected their physical and intellectual property so they could profit from their products. However, in the Tea Party elite's almost fanatical desire to reduce taxes and regulation on their companies, they conveniently ignore these facts. Now, I'm not saying they didn't build it. I'm saying they were able to build it because the society in which they operated was designed to foster such an entrepreneurial spirit, and that fact is lost on the Tea Party elites. Over the years, they built a powerful and successful message machine that amplified and sold this anti-government theory to their followers and to many other Americans. The Rush Limbaughs, the Fox Newses agree with the plutocrats and spread their propaganda to the masses. Their message machine spends virtually all its time not in delivering objective news, but in tearing down government. They spend countless hours, you've heard them, magnifying the smallest of government foibles. They spend virtually no time recounting any government successes. They blame the failures of society on government, often with convoluted but convincing logic. The message machine and their spin masters were ready to pounce in 2009, to channel the anger of average Americans into a philosophy which painted government as the root of their problems and anxieties, and the dramatic reduction of government as a solution to their ills. Fed by their message machine, the word government quickly became the shibboleth for everything that Tea Party grassrooters and many other Americans didn't like, regardless of whether government was responsible for problems. The very real social and economic anxiety was the petri dish in which the Tea Party elite could let their message grow and mature, and they directed the public's anxiety and anger at their favorite boogeyman, government. They gave people a phony explanation for why their incomes were declining, why good-paying jobs were dwindling, why society was changing, and they called it all government. Here are two examples. Technology and globalization are largely a private sector phenomenon that most economists agree are the foremost reason for the decline of manufacturing jobs. But Tea Party leaders managed to convince their followers that government regulation of companies was the main cause. The internet, again, largely a private sector enterprise, allows kids to see and interact with all kinds of people and things that their parents might not approve of. But Tea Party leaders convinced the grassroots that government permissiveness was to blame. The list could go on and on. Frame the debate. Government was bad for almost everything.
This guy's a joke.
The fundamental contradiction here is not only that government didn't cause many of these problems, but the average citizen, and even the average Tea Party member, likes and wants to retain most of what government does.
No, we don't.
Especially when it is broken down into its component parts. The average Tea Party member, like the average American, likes government-run Medicare. They like government programs. And they like government support for education, both high and low. I came to realize this while engaging Tea Party members who routinely picket my events during the health care debate. I'd approach them. It's my nature.
It's so full of crap. You ran like a coward.
Someone would immediately shout out as I approached. Get your government's hands
You ran
out of
from
my
me, boy.
pockets. If it was an elderly person who said this, I would ask them what kind of health care they had. And oftentimes they'd shoot back, Medicare, don't you touch it. Or if they simply said Medicare, I'd ask them what they thought of it. They'd inevitably say they wanted to keep it as it was. Just don't let Obamacare mess it up. The fundamental and stark contradiction between the Tea Party elite and followers hit home to me for a few months ago and made me start thinking that results in this speech. It occurred in an event on southern Staten Island, in a working-class, blue-collar, and very Republican community. I was at a sidewalk event talking about prescription drug abuse with other legislators, both Democrat and Republican. And a group came over there to heckle us. The heckling was led by one very angry, very impolite gentleman. He kept interrupting us all the time, using the standard Rush Limbaugh talking points. Your government is wasting our money, he would interrupt. What are you doing about Obama phones? He would shout. How are your friends the tri-lawyers? He would ask. He was quite agitated, and his band of followers were nodding in agreement at his every word. So I finally said to him, please let us finish, and I'll sit down and talk to you about what's bothering you. When we first sat down, I asked him my usual question. Do you like Medicare? He answered, yeah, I like Medicare. I don't think you should change that. And then he went on about how bad Obamacare was and how it would ruin all health care. I asked him if he had ever personally encountered or even talked to a trial lawyer. He said no. Then I explained to him the myth of Obama phones. He said, I don't believe you. I've read it in the newspapers and heard it on TV.
What's the myth?
It was very clear. He was just mouthing the Tea Party Rush Limbaugh talking. Very clear. He was very angry. So I finally said to him, what's really bugging you? He said, I am a retired state prison guard, and you guys, meaning government, just cut my pension benefits. That really makes me angry. Amazing. Amazing. Here was a gentleman who spent his whole career as a public servant in a good government job with a good government pension, which, by the way, he thought wasn't generous enough. And here he was on the front line of the Tea Party government haters. I tried to explain to him that if the Tea Party, the plutocrats, and Rush Limbaugh had their way, he might not have had his government job, and he almost certainly wouldn't have had his government pension. He said, oh, that's a lot of left-wing propaganda, and walked away. But it dawned on him. He, and many, many others like him, wasn't angry because government was doing too little.
Oh, they're not
He was
doing
actually
enough, right?
angry because government wasn't doing enough.
Oh my God.
One very...
Dave, next time just water bottles.
All right, look, you know, I'm sorry to do that to you, but, okay?
Don't do it again.
There actually was a reason, okay? And the reason is this. That is one frustrated guy up there. They've been attacking us for 5 years, and they've gotten nowhere. They got nowhere in 2010. They've got nowhere recently. The polls are turning against them. And he's the one guy who's the appointed hitman. And the reason Schumer's the appointed hitman is because he's from New York. And he's safe. And can never be kicked out of office. So there you go. This is why he's the guy. So, you think he's just a rotten guy. It's his assignment.
And because Anthony Weiner's junk went viral.
But if you listen to what he said, and the way he said it, remember what we've been saying from the beginning. We started 5 years ago, almost 5.5 years ago. And I explained to you how movements go, and the normal progression of a movement. First they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you.
And then they lose.
Then they lose, right, okay? Now, it's going exactly according to plan. We're now in the fighting stage. Now, what he did there, he's talking to his friends there, so, he's a little more flip than he usually would be, okay? And by the way, we'll find out who that was in Staten Island, because there's only 3 Tea Party leaders in Staten Island, so we're going to find out which one that was and see how much BS that was all about. Because every time we went to his office, he ran out the back door, if you recall.
He ran from me in the Massapequa Street Fair.
That's right.
Just
Now,
two of us, he ran.
There were some key elements that you can take away from this stuff. Because what they're going to do now is they're going to use this as the basis to define us and define anybody that we support. And the first term he used was Tea Party companies. Did you hear that?
Yep.
Tea Party companies. It's right out of Rules for Radicals. Okay? We're going to attack the rich. Okay? We're all rich now. You got that? We're the 1%ers. We all own companies. We want to get rid of regulations so we can improve our profits, and screw our employees. Got it? Right.
How much of that Koch brother money is actually funding CSA?
Well, yes, yeah, absolute zero.
Thought so.
The other point, getting to what you're talking about, Tea Party elites. Again, Saul Alinsky. Don't attack the ideas. Attack the person. The problem they've had with the Tea Party is there is no person. It's everybody. There are no Tea Party elites. There are no Tea Party leaders. They are struggling to apply rules for radicals to a movement. They're probably going to fail because no one buys the Koch brothers. They give more money to the moderate Republicans. They certainly have never given us a dime. Okay? Any of the other so-called Tea Party groups, whatever, we've got nothing.
They did help family finance the early libertarian.
Well, that's great. It didn't do us any good, that's for sure. But you know what I'm saying? It's all BS. But they need to have a person. Now they're trying to get Limbaugh and trying to get this, look at the Koch brothers. But it's all trying to fit into their playbook because they only have one playbook. They have to attack personally. They have to attack the messenger, not the message. So that's part of what's going on here as well. Plutocrats.
Like George Soros.
Those are, basically that's just a term that means, rich people running a government. All right? It's another word for crony capitalism. We use the term crony capitalism because that's a horrible term. He's kind of using a different term, but he means the same thing. They're trying to spin that whole thing. So that's going on as well. And you also notice when he talked about this thing, what they're going to do is every time you or us or anybody attacks a government program, they're just going to come back to you and say, well, you like the highway department, you like the garbage collector, you like the teachers in your school. Yeah, these are, if you like government, you got to like all government. Okay? No, we just don't like excessive government. Okay? Limited government. I mean, that's a simple thing. Don't anybody in a debate suck you into that. Because the first thing they're going to ask you is, oh, you like Medicare, right? Not particularly. Especially the $500 million in fraud that goes on every year. The billions and billions and billions of dollars that are stolen from taxpayers in the execution of that program, I think that could be done better. Yeah, maybe it's a service that's necessary, but you know what? Government's not doing a very good job. Oh, we just certainly love Social Security. Yeah, I've been paying into it 8% a year for the last 30 years, 40 years. I'm self-employed. I pay 16% a year.
And it's broke. The politicians stole the money.
And they corrupted it. So do I like Social Security? Not the way you run it. I want my money. I put into that. Okay? That's a retirement fund that was supposed to be in a lock box someplace. Try and find the money. And the other point he makes is the services that we actually feel are important, 90% of those come from state and local government. Okay? Remember the government shutdown? Dial 911. They showed up, sent your kids to school, garbage got collected, police were on the job, hospitals were open. I mean, did we really suffer that much in our communities because of a federal government shutdown? When these, no, they didn't shut down the IRS, that's right. They did shut down the parks too. But in either case, the point is if you get into a debate on these issues, the debate isn't about whether government should be there or not, because he's trying to, he's trying to sell that we're a bunch of anarchists. We want no government. No, we don't want no government. We want the police. We want the garbage collected. We want that stuff, sure. But do we want the federal government to control it? That's the difference. The difference, this all comes down, is to local control on almost every issue. Even getting to the Common Core, which we'll discuss in a second. The federal government thinking they have the answer to everything is a bunch of baloney. Now, here's the good news. Oh, I got good news tonight, don't worry.
Let's hear it.
Okay. You all heard of the Washington Post, right?
Yeah.
How would you like to describe their editorial policy?
New York Times.
Pretty close.
Washington Post. Dateline, January 27, 10:47 a.m. The new Washington Post ABC poll shows that despite the many, many eulogies that have been delivered for the Tea Party over the last 4 years, obituaries that reached a fever pace following the government shutdown, GOP support for the movement has remained mostly unchanged since early 2013. Among Democrats and independents, support for the Tea Party is on the upswing. Now, I've talked about this at past meetings, okay? Because they've done everything they can to say that we went away, we're not doing anything, they disappeared, all this kind of crap. Yes, right, and then they go and do this, and they go nuts over it, okay? Well, I finally found out why. And it has something to do with this. Now, I've been talking about the importance of the Tea Party movement and the importance of conservative politics for the last 5 years. And what really upsets me, of course, and we discussed it here, is the Republican Party that refuses to realize that if you don't recognize that conservative values are important to win elections everywhere, forget yourselves as a party. Well, we now have the proof now, because the last poll was done 2 years ago, and I discussed this a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of meetings ago. About 22% of the people nationwide 2 years ago supported the Tea Party. But then you do some calculations of my own, well, they've been verified. Let me put this little thing up here for you. Because even I was surprised at this. All right, take a rough look at this, because this is really, really interesting. Before and after the government shut down, between 60–70% of Republicans, blah, 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 said they support the Tea Party. So they went down the lines. As of last week, 63% of Republicans identify themselves as supporting of the Tea Party. These are self-identified. They did polls and asked people, are you in support of Tea Party and Tea Party principles? 63% are Republicans. So you find me a Republican in a primary or in a national election that's going to win without that support, because that 63% of their support is coming from us. Independents, 44%. This is national polls, this came out this morning, okay? 44%. And even more telling, look at the last line. 20% of Democrats support the Tea Party movement. That's 1 out of 4 in the country. You wonder why Chuck Schumer is having a heart attack? You wonder why Chuck Schumer is sitting there and saying we got to do something? You wonder why the president sits up there and goes crazy? He's losing his own party. 1 out of 5 Democrats. And look at the curve. Look at the dip. The shutdown didn't hurt our movement. It enhanced it and helped it. Ted Cruz when that line started. He started opening his mouth.
Send it to Peter King.
You're right, okay? This is extremely, extremely important, okay? Because the next time you're in a room someplace and there's 100 people in it, you can roughly go down the line, and you know what? Probably 60 or 70% of those people are supporters of you and what you've done and what you stand for. So what's going on right now is just what we've been looking for. It seems that the more they fight, the more they protest, the more the press goes against us, the more people look up and say, hey, they got something on the ball here. And honestly, that little dip there on the Democrats, look where the curve is going. If we can go a couple more months like this and get into some campaigns and stay on the ball and keep doing what we're doing, those numbers are going to get even better. There's a good possibility that in the next 6 months, 1 out of 4 Democrats are going to support the Tea Party. Now, when we started this organization, everybody said, you know, it's going to be impossible to go out and change the country, change this, change that. And I said right from the beginning, we only have to change 4 out of 100 people. That's 4%. We have achieved our goal. Okay? The only problem we have left is the intransigence of the status quo. Those people who are sitting in office right now who like the way things are. And that's on both sides of the political spectrum. That's Republicans, Democrats, whatever, it doesn't matter. What we're going to have right now, we have the movement on our side. We have the people on our side now. There's always a delay between what the people are doing and leading the way to that to get through, you know, elected officials, government, and to have an effect. But I can tell you right now, every politician in the country is looking at these numbers today and scratching their heads and saying, holy hell, what does this mean? Right.
The only thing I would disagree with you on is that our biggest challenge, assuming these numbers are right, is not at the moment changing people's minds. It's getting them off their goddamn couch to go vote.
You're right. Well, there's small print on that too, Ray. Let me tell you this, okay? One of the things it did say, I'll take it in a second, Butch, I'm sorry. There is some small print on it. You can read the article, I'll post it up on the website and all that kind of stuff. It just came out, I didn't get a chance to do it. But on the small print, the 63% number that they're talking about, okay? Their experience is, in primaries and general elections, of the 63% of the people that say they support the Tea Party, 73% of them vote all the time. And the other 37% only vote 34% of the time. So even though the number is 63% of people who are there, the actual number showing up to vote is over 75%. So there's a little small print in there that, I agree with you though, we have to, you know, get people more involved to make it happen. But the small print in here is people who believe like us. We all show up. You know, I'd rather ask how many people didn't vote because we'll get 3 hands. You know, that's the way it is. But you know, in a primary, what do you get? 5%, 6%, 7%? That kind of thing. Good.
Yeah, a couple of comments. First of all, that is probably what you're looking at as national figures, okay? But that doesn't mean when you go out to a place on Long Island, you're going to get that same answer. Okay? So we've got to work hard here to turn the tide. Second thing is, if that's true, on a national basis, we shouldn't lose an election in 2014.
Well, that's a whole other issue.
Unless you get Romney or Christie or some other McCain.
The third point I want to make is I put an article in on the website that said that told about a Yale professor who did a study with a government grant on the intelligence of Tea Party members versus other people. And I don't know if anybody read it or not.
Yeah.
But the study clearly showed that Tea Party people were far more intelligent than the rest of the world. Just so you know that.
Not only as far as history goes, but also by science.
Yes, it was logic, science,
Science,
math, history, right.
You know, it's interesting, but I think that puts us in the elite category. We want to avoid that.
One of our biggest problems is the uninformed voter.
Exactly. I was getting to
My
that.
family are Democrats,
Yeah.
but Democrats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Been known to go recruit people coming out of high school and going into college in the 18-year-old range. And they're just gathering them up and sending them to the voting booth.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
not
they do.
going to vote conservative.
No, I understand, and you know what, to get to Butch's point and your point as well, all right? These are good news, this is kind of good news as far as, you know, our movement is concerned. Translating that into the electoral process is a different story. It's a different story. Because the other problem that we have is getting nominations for people like ourselves, okay? You know, I've screened a couple
You
of
gotta
times.
have the candidates.
Yeah, you gotta have candidates too, but you also need to have the party to understand these numbers. It's probably more important that party leaders start to understand that these numbers are going to impact them going forward, so that they start to make decisions and making nominations of people that feel like us. Right now, we run into those, that's an obstacle for us. It's not.
The 18-year-old is the uninformed voter.
Well, yeah, they always are. I mean, they run informed when I was 18 too, but you know, no, you're right about that.
They have big numbers. They have big numbers.
They have big numbers, unfortunately, I hate to say it, they still don't show up. Even when Obama won the first time, everybody was saying this is going to be the biggest turnout for young voters in the history of the nation. No, there was no change. There was no change, I swear to God, the numbers were the same, all right? So, no, but I'm not giving up on that. I have something we'll talk about in a second where we're trying to answer that issue. But I think you're right, the uninformed voter, you're right, and you also have those people over there who think, you know what, if the president's right, and I agree with him, due process has nothing to do with it, and if you have to run a rough shot over Congress, that's okay.
For perspective, 1976, I turned 18 and promptly voted for Jimmy Carter.
Oh, there you go, see that?
Then
I'm sorry you admitted that.
Wait, it gets better, because then I started working at 20,
Yeah.
looked at my paycheck, and by 1980, I voted for Reagan.
There you go. All right. Well, one of the things, I'll move into what you were talking about, okay? This is all fine and dandy, these are good numbers, this shows that whatever we're doing nationally is having an impact, okay? But then it gets on to the next step, which is exactly what your point was, which is delivering the message. Now, one of the things that we try to do relative to delivering the message is we are trying to develop, and have developed, okay, a method of using the alternative medias and the internets and the Facebooks and the social media things to get our message out. Just in the last 30 days alone, we have spent a couple of dollars. We try and raise money, and I'll ask everybody here who's interested in helping in this thing. We have a sustainable membership option. You can come in and say, I'm going to give you $5 a month, $10 a month. You sign up online. You know, you make a 12-month commitment. Nobody gets paid at CSA, by the way. Okay? This is a completely volunteer operation. Nobody gets a dime. But what we have been successful at is using the social media, some paid social media, to get our word out. And what we've done in the last 30 days is there's some issues, especially Common Core recently, because that's a hot issue. We've actually spent some money, and we reached tens of thousands of people with the message of how Common Core is corrupting our children and corrupting our education system. So what we've done as a group is we try and get the money together. It's not expensive. It's not like mail. It's not like TV. It's not like radio. Okay, for hundreds of dollars rather than tens of thousands of dollars, you can now reach tens of thousands of people, and we have. We've gone out there. We've got it to the point just in the Common Core issue that our one state senator said in the newspaper, I can't go anywhere, do any place, or be near a telephone that it's not going off and someone's not mentioning Common Core. It's a byproduct of what we're trying to do. It's true. So what we're attempting to do now is deliver the message. We need to get beyond just us. We need to get beyond just, preaching to the choir. Everybody here agrees with what we're doing. But what we need to do is remain solid. That we can raise a couple of dollars. I'd ask everybody if you could get involved with that. Just pledge whatever you can. $5 a month, whatever. You go online over there on your computer at home. You put in a number and your credit card, and every month on the 1st or the 10th of the month, whatever it is, we'll take $5. We will spend that to get the message out. It's worked. We've spent probably a couple of $1,000 in the last 60 days, and we reach hundreds of thousands of people. making huge impressions. We're getting comments back. We're getting people who are signing up like pages. We're getting people who are volunteering. We're holding subgroup meetings out there to try and drive specific issues, whether that's the Agenda 21 issues, the Common Core issues. Even you mentioned Peter King. We did a couple of a couple of blasts out on Mr. King about him going out and attacking conservatives, in national conservatives. Butch.
Yeah, just so people know, and maybe you can explain how easy it is to opt out. When you say you're going to give $5 to $10 a month, and you change your mind, how easy it is to do that?
Well, yeah, actually, if you wanted to do this, if you leave an email address with whoever wants to collect your email address, I will send you an email. It's just a link on a page. You fill out how much you want to do, and that's it. It takes you to a credit card thing, so you pop a credit card in. You want to cancel? No problem. You drop an email, you're out. But it'll only run for 12 months and drop out also. It's a 12-month and then it stops. You have to renew after that. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that's also happening with the Common Core, or maybe it's not Common Core, but with what they're doing in education, they're not teaching, the photosynthesis. They're not teaching the part where the trees absorb carbon dioxide and give us oxygen if that's what we breathe.
Oh, I wonder why.
They have eliminated.
Are you serious about that?
I'm dead serious, but because my niece wanted.
You know what? Do me a favor. We're gonna discuss Common Core in a second, exclusively.
All right.
But I would please get that information to us, because one of the things we are doing is we're preparing a campaign now, one of these social media campaigns right now relative to Common Core. We've come up with 6 or 8 different issues and ideas and concepts that we want to go out with. And we are looking for things and examples of why this is bad for our children. And that's just another one, because that's very interesting. Yes?
One other thing, just so you all know, you're going to be giving a quote charge card and everyone's worried about fraud. It's either this one or it's me running the charge. Okay?
No, it's
I don't
PayPal.
mean to be well, if it's not on PayPal is still coming through.
No, it comes through our portal.
Oh
yeah, nobody sees that. Yeah.
Involved with it. So it's not going to some mass abyss where you're sending numbers to an unsecured area. Okay, so frankly, that's like Obama. Well, NSA is everything secured and unsecured, but it's a totally different concept. So its information is with us, not with the mass abyss.
Right. Now, we're going to move on because it's getting late, unfortunately. I apologize. But, one thing I did want to discuss, and again, it gets back to almost what you were talking about, trying to get the word out. One of the things we tried to do over the years is not only act as an organization ourselves, CSA, we act independently. Whenever you read the newspaper about us being controlled by somebody, okay, I haven't gotten a phone call from anybody, anywhere, at any time, to be directed to do anything. Okay? Except, some candidates that don't like us and ask us not to post things on the internet, which by the way happened yesterday. But anyway, that's about the only interaction that we've actually had as far as cooperation, any kind of money, things like that. We definitely keep that, totally separate, and we're totally autonomous. But what we also realize is that in getting the message out and getting things done, we have to form coalitions with other groups that think like us. Now, we just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with a bunch of other groups along, the Long Island areas, which is basically where we started. We had organizations, Right Principle. Matter of fact, Tony, Right Principle, stand up, Tony, for a second. Let me know who you are. Tony, we've worked, on and off together for the last 5 years, and one of our frustrations always has been, if we pool our resources and work hard, work together as organizations, we can have a bigger clout. So we finally had a meeting on that a couple of weeks ago. Tony put it together. We had it up at a diner up in Roslyn someplace. And we had a bunch of groups there. The Oath Keepers were there, CSA was there, the Right Principles was there, Future Republicans was there, a couple of libertarian groups were there. We had some people there who were representing organizations that think like us. They know there's something wrong with the country, and they know something has to be done. And we all know that if we get together and work together, we can do a lot more. Now, I'll have a lot more information on that. But do you want to say a couple of words about that, Tony, please?
Yeah, generally, keep this as short as possible. We have come to the conclusion that we can win elections. We know that. We did it in 2010. We've done it across the country. One of the untold stories about 2010 is that this just didn't happen in Congress. It went across the country. It was done in state and local and state assemblies across the country, which is one of the reasons why the Orange Crybaby baby is so secure up there, because they've basically done what is done in state districts. You gerrymandered a district to ensure that you're going to get reelected, which is why we'll probably keep the House, why they've got the House in the first place. It's because of us. And by us, I mean the conservative base. Our problem is we're able to get elected, and we're able to make wave elections, 2010, 80, 84, 92. And then we're told by the other side, by the professionals, by the John Boehners, by the Karl Roves, by all of the losers that hand us one losing election after the other. Run through your head. Jerry Ford, Rhino, loser. Bob Dole, loser. George Bush the first, when he came out, when he ran the second time. First time he ran as Ronald Reagan. Next time he ran as compassion because he lost, right? And then the most recent ones, McCain and Romney. Loser, 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 loser. When they listen to us, who supposedly are not professionals and don't know what they're doing, we have wave elections. When we listen to them, we either have Pyrrhic victories like we did with Bush 2, or we have disasters, right? We need a bigger coalition. The people that came from our side, from the conservative base, are with us. We all know what we agree on. We all know what we oppose. We just saw a really vile example of it in Chuck Schumer here. We need to bring in other groups. One of the groups we need to bring in are libertarian people. Now, we don't have an exact agreement with libertarians on all sorts of things. However, we agree on the Constitution. What are problems with the libertarians? Well, some of us have problems with their social issues. On the other hand, they believe in the 10th Amendment. We believe in the 10th Amendment. I want something, a local issue. Send it back to the states. Devolve it back to the states. You do that, social issues kind of disappear, right? You can go move to the state which you're comfortable with. You can't do that now because the government's too big. On a host of other issues, we can come to common ground with the libertarians. And we brought two very influential libertarian groups in that talked to us. And as a matter of fact, one of them was, what do they call the associate members of Oath Keepers? These are the guys that aren't military or, yeah, they're the associates, they support Oath Keepers. This guy was an associate of Oath Keepers, so if you think that all libertarians are just simply, anti-war, isolationists or something like that, it's not a fair view. There are many reasonable, rational libertarians who want to fight for the government, right? And they're with us on it. So, what we're trying to do here is oppose those groups that are supposedly inside among us. The Kings, the Roves, I could go down a list of the McCains. Because if you watch that whole interview with Cuomo, he blows a lot of kisses to the moderate Republicans. If you watch that hellish display last night on the State of the Union, he turned around and blew a kiss to John Boehner, for which John Boehner got up and took a bow. They don't have a problem with each other, because the only difference between those type of Republicans and the Democrats is that those type of Republicans say, yes, we agree with the big government, but we can run it better. No, I don't want a big government. I don't care who runs it. So, what we're trying to get together, and we're going to be speaking to some people out in New Jersey, which is one of the, I don't want to name any names here, but it is one of the main people in New Jersey that's involved with a very large libertarian group out there, that one of these guys that came to our meeting is associated with. As a matter of fact, both of them are associated with it. We're going to be having meetings with them. What we're going to be trying to put together is a response. We have not attacked the moderates or the rhinos. When they call us out and say, listen, everything's over, come out and vote for Romney, most of us probably voted for Romney. Most of us probably did. Romney was, well, how many? There were 10 candidates from Romney was my 17th choice out of 10 candidates. I wound up voting for Romney. Well, because we always come on board. They always stab us in the back. We need to grow out our base, welcome in the libertarians that are reasonable, that agree with us. I don't mean the wingtips. The wingtips of our group and the wingtips of their group will never the twain shall meet. They are devoted to what they believe in, and we can't shake them. But you don't build a coalition on the fringes. You build it around groups that want to work together. There are more than enough libertarians that want to work together. We need to make an answer to the rhinos. They are this big in this party. They have a lot of money, and they have a lot of institutional strength. But they have no numbers, and they have no support. If you ask that 63% how many of them support Karl Rove, I would imagine the thing wouldn't be going like this, it would be going like that, all right? So we'll be giving you more information on this, but we're planning a response that the rhinos will not be able to ignore. something that they won't be able to ignore, because it's gonna happen more or less on their front stoop, where they heard, so to speak, and they will not be able to ignore us. Because in this country, if you're not on TV, you're not real. As a matter of fact, if you don't believe me, go home tonight, watch one of these idiot reality shows. Those people, the people that watch that, they think they're real. They think the news is fake. They think we're fake. We have to turn that around with them. So I'll be working with Steve on this, and again, as a person who has another group, we work up in Connecticut, we work in New York, but we also work up in Connecticut. I told Steve this at the meeting. This group is a model for other people. It is a model for what we work off of in Connecticut. What you've accomplished here does not go unnoticed. Steve is to be congratulated, you all are to be congratulated, and I thank you for your work.
And just as a short follow-up to that, that was a group that we met, pretty much, regional down here, Long Island, Connecticut area. We are reaching out to other areas. We've been approached by a group out of Staten Island that wants to open up a chapter there. So we'll be following up on that. We think that's kind of interesting. We'll probably pursue that. But I also had a meeting yesterday. We went up to Albany, as Steve Levy said. We went up there to back him up on that initiative relative to the unfunded mandates. But that's not the real reason I went. I had a couple of meetings up there with some people as well to talk about exactly what Tony was talking about. So this coalition that we're working on, even though it's starting it right down here, it's our plan that within a relatively short period of time, we're going to hold a statewide convention of organizations. Now, I'm not talking about a convention in the context that we have to have a single group or organization, but we're going to have a meeting of state leaders who believe like us, so that when we do something, we can execute statewide. We can take resources from other places where there is no fight and apply them to a place where there is a fight. Now, if those happen to be, races, if it happens to be lobbying efforts, things like that, if we can get statewide clout, and we can all work together and get 100 or so groups that can actually coordinate activities, and then target 5, 6, or 7 issues that we concentrate our efforts on, then we can be successful. So that's kind of the things that are going on in the background. Anybody wants to help in that way, anyone who has an idea about groups who might be willing to, get involved in something like this, please let me know, and I would appreciate it. Right now, I want to introduce Judy, who's going to bring on the next portion of the program here. We got a lot of other things. And Judy, by the way, she's back after a while. She's been injured, if you didn't realize it, so I'm glad she's back.
Rear-ended by an illegal immigrant and unlicensed in bad job. Who'd have guessed, right? And we don't have any problems. Okay, really quickly, Stephen was talking about the Grand Coalition and the fact that it's going throughout the state. One of the benefits of me sitting on my butt with a computer looking around at the area, and also individuals in this group, both Debbie Getz and Natalie had referred me information from a group called Suffolk United. I have Laura here right now. Those are her 2 little guys in the back, and she's got her little man here. She's going to give you some information. She is the co-founder of this group. They have the same problems that we have with the Agenda 21, the overabundant welfare-related push to make our Long Island a welfare haven. People are homeless, need help, but let's get a life, So I'm going to give her a few minutes. She's got the little man, and I'm going to be trying to run block over here. So when she's finished, I'll grab the mic back. So thank you. There are flyers that I have here. They're going to be in the back. This is information about what they're doing. This will also be posted on the meetup. Okay, and I'm going to send it out as a posting on the meetup and as an email to everyone, because this is important. Please, Laura, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, I'm part of Suffolk United. I helped start it, and I'm one of the main people. I'm very active and supporting on it. I don't know how many people know what Steve Balloon's been doing in Suffolk County. I do not have a very high opinion of everything going on with it. His latest thing is he's now closing down small shelters and creating mega shelters. The latest one is illegal. It's not approved. It's operating as a Tier 2 shelter, even though it's approved as a Tier 1. And you might be like, well, what does that mean? Suffolk County law states you are only allowed 12 families per shelter with a maximum of 48 people within a 2-mile radius. And that's to help protect the community against the burdens that it could have, against the school districts, about protecting our children, about just not being overwhelmed with our resources. We are not heartless people. No, you can't talk. No, gotta have some humor here. We are not heartless people. The media, Newsday, has painted us out to be a bunch of NIMBYs, to make us that we're horrible, heartless people that will have these down on their luck people in the streets starving and dying. No, that's not us at all. We have no interest in that.
We got it under control, don't worry.
It's the third one, I don't even look anymore. We are looking so that it gets divided equally. Now, as a school teacher myself, I know what's going on in the school districts. We get no funding at all for out-of-state people. So you'd be like, well, how many people are really coming up? No, they are coming up because they know Suffolk County is one of the best, wealthier counties in the country. We are known as a safety net state. We are the gold Cadillac of benefits that we provide to everybody. Literally, people have flown here. People take the I-95 right up. And personally, I don't understand why Suffolk. Out of all the places, like go upstate where it's cheaper, why Suffolk? We have one of the highest cost of living in the country. So if that was my game plan, I might be like, yeah, I'm going to New York, but I'd go upstate or something where the amount of money still goes further. Thank you. So we have some things that we're talking about. We're trying to be very open, and this could even appeal to liberals and everything, because some people are saying, well, what about the homeless people? Right now, everybody knows where they are because of that address. They are living in a motel, they have no kitchens, they have no way to cook or take care of their kids. And they just run around unsupervised. Why are so many homeless families living in one legislative district when there's 18 on Suffolk? Why is Suffolk County breaking its own laws about housing the homeless, exceeding numbers in one location? Why do social services think it's okay to feed children from a microwave and from convenience stores like 7-Eleven? Is this not a direct dereliction of their duty? Why should one school district have to pick up costs of dozens and possibly hundreds of students? Because there's 96 families in there currently, not only could all those kids choose to go to Hot Pocket at any point, and the surrounding areas, because now Steve Malone says he's putting them into Smithtown and Comac, and I know for sure that they're in those school districts too. It could be double that, because they can move, and then they have the right to come back to our school districts. Hot Pocket is currently busing kids from Brooklyn back to Hot Pocket, and that's on our budget. That is what's going on, and nobody's aware. We have to, by the federal state law, they can go, and within 50 miles, they have a right to go back to their home district. So now that they've shown, when they got put into homeless, they have a choice to go back to their new district or their old district. So when they're coming from bad areas, of course they're going to choose to go to the better schools. But then if they get placed elsewhere, they then have the right to come back to Hop Hog or Smithtown or Comac, Deer Park, wherever they're getting put into. They have the right to come back. We don't. And especially if it's if they're in state, it's billed back to their original district. So you don't take a real loss on that. My concern is the out-of-staters. We get no financial aid. I'm in Smithtown. We're already $5 million down in the budget to start. So we're going to probably lose elective teachers, and I'm an elective teacher. I'm very upfront, so I'm very well aware. Every year my job's on the line, because I'm technology. That now we have to worry about this. Every 2 out-of-staters could cost us a job, because the average care of special education could be $56,000, and then 2 of them will cost 1 teacher. Now the regular ed ones are only about $14,000, but I know in one of the schools in the thing, everyone but one is special needs. Because if you think about it, they've dealt with so much emotional needs, and as a teacher, I'm very understanding that they need extra help, they need to catch up, they need this, that. That's not me being heartless, that's just me being well aware of it. Well, why isn't the government paying for that? Like, why is it just on one thing? Hop Hog and the surrounding areas, especially Hop Hog School District, can become number 2 in homeless to begin with. I mean, if they ever put them all in here, we could become number 2 behind William Floyd. We were 38th to begin with before this all started. There was 32 districts on Long Island with 10 or less students to begin with. We were not one of them. And there's just facts upon facts. Now, we've been going to these meetings, and nothing has done. They tabled the vote every single time. So people are taking off work from their jobs to come to voice their opinions, and John Kennedy has been fabulous with us. We love him. He's the one proposing everything. We fully support him. But they keep tabling the votes. Our next meeting is on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. I don't know if anybody can come. We just even have email addresses and everything to support. We have every legislator's phone number who's now on the board. Please feel free to call every single day if you want. Say hi, how you doing? By the way, stop this. That's apparently annoying them, so I love to do that. And like I said, we're not throwing them out in the streets. We're just trying to make this fair and equitable. Why are you possibly redistributing all the wealth in certain areas? Why is it Western Suffolk has 60% of it? Brentwood now has a 400-person one. This is less than 2 miles from that. And they have another 41-person one right down the street. Why is Western Suffolk all of a sudden a target of all of this? All over. I don't have the exact numbers. I get mixed numbers about how, and that's all confidential. Because we have safety nets, so if they're off of welfare after 5 years and don't have money, they come here. If they fail their drug test in Florida and they're kicked off, we don't have drug tests for any of our welfare. So even though we're drug tested to work, they don't have to get drug tested to receive our money. God love that. So that's some of the reasons why. I still don't understand Suffolk, but CHI was false to begin with because they presented 100 family models. So how could you ever intend to comply with Suffolk County laws if you're giving people on 100 family model numbers? Because they're saying that's what makes a profit. Well, that doesn't follow our laws, so how did that even get into play? This wasn't an accident, it was planned. They also have one that is approved in Shirley-ish, and that's about 70 families, but that is legal. This one is currently illegal, and they're trying to make it. So obviously it's easier to stop the process of it becoming legal, because then you'll never get rid of it. And I heard that the Brentwood one is still illegal too. So we've been calling up Flanagan and everybody to try to get this stopped and to vote no on it, because all of the hotels and motels could be next. And the motels, for just a room, is getting like $5,000 per room per month. That's better than rent. The people themselves have come up and said, listen, I couldn't make my mortgage. I fell into hard times. I just need like $2,000 a month in a house, and I can pay for the rest. I'll save you guys like $5,000 and everything like that. Just help me with my mortgage. So the people have come out saying that, and now everybody's like, I don't want to live like this. We're crammed in, they're worried about issues. Some people are not that nice. Some people are really good, hardworking people that have fallen on hard times. Like this is when I become all soft and stuff, because bad things happen to good people. I am not turning my back on that, but this is really making it harder and harder for me to accept that when people abuse the system. When you're coming up out of state for this, it's turning me cold on that, and I don't want to become that. But that's unfortunately what's happening because too many people are abusing it. There's really 3 types of homeless now. There's the generalization, I can't even say the word now, I'm so tired. The ones from out of state, and the people that are recently, the middle class, that are now falling on hard times. Those are the people I truly want to help. But unfortunately, too many other people are abusing it.
The people are abusing it because they're being allowed to abuse it.
That's the government's fault.
Right.
Yes.
Aren't those the ones we have to focus on?
Absolutely. There's somebody I started to work with. I'm sorry, am I supposed to be in the middle? I'm sorry, I walk around. It's my classroom teacherness. Yes, somebody I just came into contact in the last week is going to be talking to people upstate. We need to stop the safety net. If you want to have all this safety net for our people, being that we pay the taxes to begin with, fine. Keep it within New York State. Stop it from out-of-staters. At least we paid the taxes into it, and if I fell on hard times, I deserve that help. I've paid my taxes my whole entire life. If I was to fall on something, say God forbid something horrible happened, yeah, it's good to know that I have a safety net, and being I worked my whole life, I'm entitled to that, and I feel it. And other people that are good, that have worked their whole lives, they're entitled to that. But not people that never paid into this, that are just driving up from out of state, or just like, yeah, I don't want to do it. And I hear it. I even hear it as a teacher sometimes. Like, you hear the kids from there talk about it. And that's what just makes me bitter. Any other questions? Yes?
I just want to point out that the
biggest welfare project we've had in the past few years. In 2007, the Federal Reserve created $16.1 trillion and gave it to international bankers. And what they're giving to the poor people is a pittance compared to that.
It's the abuse. That's what really I'm against. I'm all for helping people. I'm against the abuse of it. Unfortunately, Steve Malone is abusing us. That's what the problem is. We're getting abused on this, and we should not have to do it. And it shouldn't be all targeted in Western Suffolk. It should be spread out more equal. That's really what we're fighting for. We're afraid what will happen. We have the 2% tax cap. We've already, school districts have been slaughtered across Long Island. So many programs have been cut. All the electives are online every single year. What are we going to lose because of this? When does it come that my child deserves his education? Why is it that I paid a ridiculous amount of money for a house, and granted, I paid for it, but my child, I bought it because of the programs that they had, and now I'm losing those programs because of this. And that's what I get mad at. I'm not denying somebody else, but don't take away from my child because of it. Any other questions? Thank you for listening to me.
Regular mailing. Before Tyrone was here from Oath Keepers, and he did ask me just to give a quick note. There's going to be a movie coming up on the 4th, and there's a reason behind this. It's a Second Amendment issue, and we all have a problem with what's going on with the Constitution. So that being said, on the 4th, and this is again on the meetup calendar, I always say it wrong, Mullen LeBay, there'll be a movie. It's going to be at South Huntington Public Library, and they'll be having their meeting on the 10th here in the hall. A quick little update. One of the benefits that I've been, again, sitting in front of a computer screen, I've been listening to the banter about our upcoming supposed governor's race and the choice of candidates. There is a crapload of people that are putting their name in the hat. But right now it seems that it's running between two. I'm hearing Astorino, who's from Westchester. He's there. Rob Astorino, he happens to be the Westchester, one of the town supervisors. He is pro-Second Amendment. He is against the Agenda 21, sustainable multifamily housings. He's against Common Core, and all of the same things that we're aligned with. Then there's also, and this one I'm expecting to have people go, what? Donald Trump. Now, I'm gonna put it out in public. I can't openly say which one I'm for yet. I haven't screened either. But I'm gonna be very blunt. If we're gonna do anything to take down Cuomo, we're gonna need a hell of a lot of money. The man's got more money than I think Trump does. Maybe $5 less, I don't know. But the point is, it's gonna be an expensive campaign. If we don't get the governor's position, we better get the Senate. So we have to have something to protect us. So it's a very touchy thing. On a quick national issue, there's a big deal going on with IRS. I'm assuming everybody in here has heard a little bit about what's going on. In a quick sentence, the plans are to implement new regulations that will let their unethical procedures be considered legal. In other words, if you're a conservative or religious group that wants to become a 501c3 or C4, you're going to be put under the microscope. If you are a progressive and or other organization, stamped, done, go. The other thing is a silencing of the already existing 501c3 and C4 organizations. What does that mean? It's very simple. 501cs cannot endorse a candidate, but what they can do is tell you about the bad things. They can talk about, I'm using Tim Bishop, the bad things that he's done. They can talk about his voting record. They can talk about how he has lied. If they get away with this regulation change, they're not going to be allowed to say that. So this is the game. They're trying to silence us. I am going to be putting up on the meetup and sending out an email. It's a 3-step request. New York State is going to be, quote unquote, the highlight state on the 10th. I'm just making sure I check my dates, I apologize. On 2/10. That means that they want New York to send in a boatload of texts, of emails, of tweets, whatever, letters to the editor, to make a point that New York is enraged and outraged. I'm gonna put all the information up on it instead of going through a 20-minute dirge on it. I think I've kind of covered everything that I can cover in a quick nutshell. I know that Mary's going to be speaking on some updates regarding what's going on with the different Agenda 21 projects, but I want to go backwards to Common Core for a quick moment. Mary's, by the way, Mary doesn't have a house anymore. She lives in her car, and Jack does follow suit because that's where she is everywhere. I know Claudine wanted to get up and give a little bit of information. So what I'm going to do is throw the mic to Claudine. I won't throw it, I'll hand it. And then Mary's going to sorry Mary, you're now cleanup hitter. But she's going to end everything up with the Common Core and the Long Island Matters Agenda 21 information. So Claudine, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Claudine Discala. I have 2 children. One's in 3rd grade and one's in 7th in the Half Hollow Hills district. Is anybody here from Half Hollow Hills? Excellent. I really need you. I want to say first that I'm really glad I'm speaking in front of the CSA because I'm usually speaking in front of my board, my school board, and they're not happy with me. They don't like me at all because I complain about Common Core. So I wanted to give you a little bit of information about it. The Common Core state standards, that's what they're called, but they're really anything but state standards. What it is an unconstitutional federal takeover of education. We know about Obamacare, this is Obamacore. We had, before, No Child Left Behind. That was another federal intrusion into education. So first, what is Common Core? It's a set of national academic standards to be taught in every state, in every classroom, across the country, at the same time. They say it's not a curriculum, they say it's a set of standards. So the schools and the states can continue to teach it any way they like. But that's not really true, because the children have to be able to pass the Common Core tests at the end of the year. And the tests drive the curriculum. So, in math, for example, and they're only doing this in math and English so far, but they will extend it to other topics. Science rolls out in September. Fantastic. So in Common Core math, for example, you can get the right answer, but if you don't show your work and work it out the way they want you to work it out, you're going to get it wrong.
And
So,
the wrong answer, you'll get it right.
yes, and the opposite, the wrong answer. But if you show the work and you do it the way they want you to do it, you'll get it right. So there's a lot of buzzwords that are being robotically repeated about Common Core. And for example, they say these are rigorous standards of what every child should know. They are not. They are not. They are untested, they're unproven, and they really amount to a 10-year experiment on our children to see if this is actually going to work. They say it will prepare them for a global economy and make them college and career ready. It will not. The only 2 educators on the validation committee refused to sign off on the standards because they were actually lowering the standards. There's actually one of the architects on tape saying, oh no, we don't mean the kind of college you're thinking about, a 4-year college. We mean a 2-year college. That's what the Common Core will help you get into. And if you take calculus in college, you're going to need to take some extra classes after the Common Core. You're not going to be able to do that. They also say the creation of these standards were state-led. They are not, and I'll go into that in a minute. They say they were prepared by educators. The only few educators that were involved in this have close ties to the testing companies. They say they were internationally benchmarked. They're not. In fact, now that that's been challenged, the Common Core website has watered that down. So now it says the standards are informed by other top-performing countries. I'm not sure what that means. It's lowering standards, actually, for high-performing districts, and there are a lot of those on Long Island. It's costing much more than the Race to the Top funds that the states were given. In my district, so far, they have spent 3 times what they've gotten in Race to the Top funds. And it's created way too much anxiety for the teachers and the children. There's something called Common Core syndrome now, where children are in need of counseling. I can attest to that myself with my daughter, and Mary can tell you about that too. The lessons are age inappropriate, and some themes are too mature, or just completely inappropriate. Are there any children left in the room? No, okay. So, some of the things that are on Engage New York, which is the Common Core website, that if you're a parent, teachers give you a link to go right to Engage New York. They had a sex quiz up there. This was supposed to make test prep fun. And a parent found it. And it had questions like, how many sex partners have you had? Would you have a gangbang or a threesome? So once this was found, they obviously took this down immediately. There's also personal, inappropriate questions, and this was a writing assignment. How well do you get along with your parents? How would you describe your family's financial situation? I think just today, Mary may have posted it, Al-Qaeda is a liberation movement. One of my favorites was in a lesson on the Berlin Wall. The person responsible for the fall of the Berlin Wall was Gorbachev. Reagan's not even mentioned. So there's a lot of issues with the inappropriateness of what they're teaching. So last year, we started hearing the words Common Core. We really didn't know a lot about it. Our schools were not teaching these standards, but yet the tests in the spring were aligned to them. And New York was one of the first to implement this, of course. So guess what? It was the disaster that you would expect. The kids didn't know the materials on the tests. There were duplicate questions. There were questions on 5th grade tests that were also on 7th grade tests. They had to suddenly write essays on these tests that they weren't prepared for. They didn't have enough time to finish the tests. And they had to endure this for 90 minutes, 3 days in a row, for English, and then again for math.
Did this replace the New York State Regents exams?
This is mostly in grades 3 through 8. So you're talking about, for example, my 3rd grader, an 8-year-old, being put through this. So the results came in, and it was a bloodbath. 70% of the kids failed the test. 70%. Can you imagine how these kids felt after a whole year of hard work to have a 70% failure rate? And it gets worse. They knew that this would happen. They allowed these kids to walk into this test and feel that frustration and feel that stress and then get that result.
You know,
So this started a firestorm.
you could almost make an argument that at the beginning of the semester, you could give people a test that you knew they were going to fail to see how they progressed. But at the end of the semester, there's no point in that.
No, there wasn't. So this is what really started a firestorm. And it seemed to us, the parents, that Common Core just sort of came out of nowhere. But then we all started researching and we found out it didn't come out of nowhere. The Common Core is the conclusion of many years of the expansion of nationwide controls over educational issues, which should remain at the local level. 20 years ago, the proponents of these standards presented a proposal that was so progressive and politically correct that the U.S. Senate voted 99-1 against it. So they knew that to get any of this kind of criteria enacted, they would need to impose these standards quickly and silently so they could circumvent the Constitution and the states. And that's exactly what they did with Common Core. For a state curriculum to be changed, the law says it must be done by each state in open meetings with extensive parent involvement, teacher involvement, business input. Then you have public meetings, you get opinion, you get input, you revise it, you put it out again to the public. None of that happened here. Common Core bypassed all of that. So I know it's getting late, but I want to give you a quick chronological order of where this came from. Back in 1980, a guy named Mark Tucker was an internationally recognized expert in education. He joined up with Hillary Clinton and Mario Cuomo to get the states to move away from local control and migrate to national standards, because our children need to grow up and become workers that could compete globally. In 1992, he wrote a letter to Hillary Clinton, which is now an infamous letter, and he included his ideas for this radical reform in education. He said, quote, "The goal is to remold the entire American system into a seamless web that literally extends from cradle to grave and is the same system for everyone, coordinated by a system of labor market boards at the local, state, and federal governments, where curriculum and job matching will be handled by counselors through an integrated computer-based system."
So solid.
Yes. So Clinton thought this was great, so he enacted 3 bills to get this ball rolling. Then the UN comes into the picture. The UN, what does the UN have to do with my children? Well, in 2004, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, using Microsoft, partnered with the UN. They signed a 28-page agreement to develop, guess what? A master curriculum, which included benchmarks and tests. The goal of the UN's campaign was universal education and education for a global economy. And here's the worst part. To them, the largest roadblock to having this happen was the United States, because each state has its own educational standards and system. In 2005, Mark Tucker created an education reform. The states began adopting it, and Bill Gates funded that. In 2006, the U.S. Department of Education signed an agreement that states they, quote, "recognize that the internationalization of education is a reality." And here's the part to pay attention to. They keep saying that Common Core is a state-led effort, that it's not the federal government. The states wanted this. That the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers came together and did this. But the facts are that in 2008, the Gates Foundation gave $2.2 million to the International Benchmarking Advisory Group report for Common Core standards. It's a 57-page document, and this is the Common Core. It states on page 37, while states must take the lead, the federal government can help. And the federal government can do that best by playing an enabling role in a new vision for a historic state-federal partnership in education. So Bill Gates, the United Nations, and the federal government just made policy in the United States. Yes, okay. So I know it's late to read up the rest of this, but guess where all this appeared next? They snuck it into the 2009 stimulus. So now, as part of that, they decided to give $4.3 billion out in Race to the Top funds. And if you wanted that money, and you wanted to get out of No Child Left Behind, you could get a waiver. But you would have to do 3 things as a state. You would have to adopt the yet unwritten Common Core standards. You would have to become a member of the testing consortia, and you would have to create a database to put all this in. So, long story short, after this, Gates poured in another $20 million to fund all of this, and the Common Core standards were created. Gates kept pouring in money. He paid the PTA $1 million so that they could push the agenda. And here we are today, basically, with what we have. The Secretary Arnie Duncan announced today, I promise you that the Department of Education will be a committed partner in the national effort to build a more environmentally literate and responsible society. So that's what they're going for. All in all, Gates put in $100 million to create and promote the Common Core with the federal government. So from all of this, there's a lot of damage that's been done that we need to undo. And that's what we've all been working together as parents. I know myself as a parent, I'm on Facebook. I don't know how many people are on Facebook. It's definitely a good idea to get on there and start reading. There's tons of sites on this. I refused the tests. I refused them last year. We need more and more parents to refuse the tests, because if you refuse the test, there's no data for them to send. And if there's no data for them to send, there's no Common Core. So it's very easy to opt out. If you want to tell anybody how to opt out, your child just can't touch the test. They're going to put the test in front, you write a letter, they refuse, and it's over. Yes?
Didn't we hear this week that the New York State Teachers Union is against Common Core?
Yes, the New York...
Did Half Hollow Hills hear this?
Yeah, I don't think they did. Yes, the New York State good things just happened this week. The New York State Teachers Association had a vote of no confidence for our commissioner. They took their support away from Common Core. There's legislation that's in the works, so it's moving, but we need a lot more support. We need you to go to your board meetings, write the congressman, write the assemblyman. Yes, Jeff?
Was the significance of that with the New York Teachers Union that they're not happy about the test, the Common Core test, but they're all good with the Common Core curriculum? Is it two separate things you're talking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are just focusing on the tests, then there's people who are focusing on Common Core.
I mean, the New York Teachers Union, I think their concern was more about the test. They were concerned about the test than they were necessarily about the test.
Yeah, I can confirm that, having come from a union meeting, New York City State, where we were just told that their union putting in a big push to not hold teachers accountable for the results of the test, because it's not fair that it's just been implemented and there's not enough time yet. There was no talk of, let's get rid of Common Core.
All right,
Thank you.
I'm going to field that. I want to field that because this is the crux of what's going on. First of all, I want to tell you where the Common Core really came from, because this is going to piss you off, because I know it pisses me off. All right, there's a document called Agenda 21. Have you all heard of it? We've talked about it here. Okay. There's a document out there called Education and Sustainable Development. And page 10 of that document says basically this: poor people who tend to be lesser educated are baby-making machines, and they waste resources because they crank out too many babies. And rich people who tend to be better educated are wasteful of resources. So, the object with sustainable development under Agenda 21 is to educate people just enough so they're not poor, stupid baby-making machines, but not so much that they're wasteful of resources. And that's where the Common Core comes in. Playing to the middle, and everybody gets a so-so education. That's where it comes from. Okay, you asked the question about, somebody asked the question about APPR, you asked about APPR. There's going to be some legislation on the table right now. John Flanagan wrote some crappy little bills to appease a few people. We're going to cancel K-2 testing, blah, blah, blah. Forget it. It's off, that doesn't even touch it. What we're looking to do is get rid of the Common Core in New York State. Just get rid of it. Goodbye. Now there is a bill in, there's actually two bills in, there's an Assembly and a Senate bill that eliminates Common Core in New York State. But guess what? Ain't gonna happen. Senate and Assembly leaders have said, no way is that bill ever gonna get to the legislature the floor of the legislature. It will never see the light of day. That's what we've been told. That's what we've been told by Skelos and Shelley and John Flanagan and the governor and anybody who can make it happen. So, what we're looking at is, and it's not making me happy, but what we're looking at is in about a week or so, we're going to see a bill come out that is going to stop the Common Core for 3 years, for a 3-year moratorium period. It's going to stop everything. The testing, the APPR, the standards, we go back to home rule, local curriculum, teachers teaching, students learning, and no more hand snapping, finger snapping, timers, bells, you know, and everything else, so that the pressure that these kids are under, which is excruciating. I had a kid that I heard about who carved the word stupid into her wrist over the state assessments. We had a suicide in Glen Cove during the ELA. A girl, a 14-year-old girl, threw herself out the window during the ELA exam. Is that okay? So we got to stop it. We're going to stop it. They're going to try to fix it, and then we're going to get rid of it. And that's what we're looking at right now. The bill should be coming out. It's going to be sponsored by Greg Ball and Lee Zeldin. We've all heard of Lee. And Al Graff and Ed Roth. And I think we might be able to get this one through. I don't think, you know, like I said, I want it gone. I want it gone for good. We got to kill this monster. But if this is the best we can get through right now, we may have to live with it. I don't know. But what I'm asking each and every one of you to do, you all have a state senator, you all have an assembly person. Call them. Call them and just ask them where they stand on the Common Core. Ask them if they've signed Al Graff's bill. Ask them if they've signed Greg Ball's bill. Right now, have you signed it? Why haven't you signed it? We've got Republicans here who haven't signed Al Graff's bill, like Joe Saladino, like Mike Fitzpatrick, haven't signed the bill. And then the other thing is, everybody needs to call Prince Andrew. Just give him a holler. Hey, it's me. Before I leave New York State, could you do us a favor? Get rid of the Common Core. All right? And John Flanagan. Make the calls. We need people to make the calls. I call the governor's office every day. Hi, it's me again. Please, we need this. The other thing is, Natalie put in the back, there's a Pearson. Pearson is, it's a publisher who owns everything. They own the tests, they own the textbooks, they own the study guides, they own 90% of the publishers. If you want to be a teacher, right now you go to college, you can't graduate unless Pearson sees a 20-minute video of you teaching and approves you as a teacher. Okay, so there's a postcard back there. We want to send Pearson a little postcard saying, you know, please stop telling our students that, you know, Muslim literature is the only literature worth reading. Because kids are reading The Librarian of Basra, where they're dodging bombs from the Taliban. I got kids going home crying because in the one story, the father leaves the house and is killed by the Taliban and never comes back, and then the mother goes off and looks for him, and she never comes back, and the kids are left alone. We've got 4th graders reading this book, coming home saying, Mommy, are you going to leave me? So we have a postcard that we'd just like Pearson to get a little message from us too. Yeah, before you leave New York. All right?
Mary, didn't you say it's all copyrighted?
Oh, the standards are copyrighted. They're owned by the National Governors Association and the CCSSO. National Governors Association is not a government organization. These are private organizations that own the copyright on the standards, which means you cannot change a thing in the Common Core. Nothing. Not a comma, not a period, nothing. You have to follow the standards to the letter, which is why we'll never be able to fix it. It's going to have to go. Yes?
Yeah, you know,
there was a list of statements. A good citizen does this, a good citizen does that. And so it starts out with things that anybody could agree with. Good citizen doesn't live. Good citizen doesn't do this. Good citizen doesn't argue. What is this, the Nazi party? You're supposed to challenge government, because government is a servant that wants to be a master, and free people don't let them, and wise people won't.
Right.
What is this, a good citizen doesn't argue?
How about they're not learning the Constitution, they're learning the UN, what the hell is that thing, the UN?
Charter.
No, it's not the charter, it's like this kumbaya UN document. Yeah, and how about the government is like, rewrite the sentence, the government is like your family. The president is like your father. The needs of the individual are not as important as the needs of the collective. It's gotta stop.
How about people to be admired? Castro, Stalin, Che
Yeah,
Guevara.
generally, the more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability.
Anybody who wants a copy? I have a question. People are getting welfare. They have a 72-inch TV. They get their nails done, their hair done. They've got more clothes than my entire family has.
They're wasteful.
But wait a second. They're not sustainable. But I'm working my shots off, and so are everyone here. But I'm going to lose my I think I'm going to go toss my cookies. Excuse me.
The governor, the president, Arnie Duncan, everybody deserves the same education. And everybody does deserve a good education. But not necessarily the same thing, the same way, at the same time, and at the same pace. Yes?
This is also all tied in with mental health. They've rewritten the definitions of abnormal psychology to include everyday things that, if you get, tired during the middle of the day and have to take a nap, then you're mentally ill.
I happen to be a psychotherapist.
So you know
just
what I'm
you
talking about.
And then there's the DSM-5 just came out, and they've rewritten a few things. There's actually an assembly bill. You want to get pissed off? No. There's an assembly bill from a New York City assemblywoman that would require each and every public school student in the state of New York to undergo a psychiatric evaluation to determine whether or not they are ready mentally to attend high school.
Well, it's also to label them all as having aberrant behavior of some sort or
Well, the
other.
only people who are qualified are people who can write prescriptions. And wrapped into this bill is also a clause that says if they're too fat, they don't get to go to school either. Their BMI will also be part of the process. So, please, call your senator, call your assemblyman, John Flanagan, and Andrew Cuomo on a regular basis, speed dial. It's a lot of fun, especially when you call Flanagan's office and they tell you, everybody's in favor of the Common Core. We've had nobody call and complain of that. That's always fun. So please, I'm just begging you, please get on the phones. Email, fax, Candygram, whatever you need to do.
There's Valentine's Day. Is that on the happy chocolate?
But there's what?
Called Common Core Awareness. It's an app.
Oh, there's a Common Core Awareness app. I didn't even know that. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Thank you. You want to speak? All right, hang on a second. We got a new people in the house.
Just one minute, a couple things. I know Judy already went over, our next meeting is here, it's on the 10th. Does everybody in here know who the Oath Keepers are?
Yeah.
Anybody not know who the Oath Keepers are? Okay, Oath Keepers, it's basically active duty and retired law enforcement and military. But I want to make the point, you don't have to be that. We had our last meeting, and they were just talking about RTI, Reach, Teach, and Inspire, reaching out to people. And so they said, well, how many people here were, active or are active duty or military retired? Only 40% of us. 60% of us were civilians. Okay? So people are waking up to this. I just want to encourage you, if you haven't come down, come down. beyond our main mission, which, you know, I have cards, you can pick them up in the back. The white cards are the national cards, and they basically have the 10 points on the back. You know, we're not going to crash your house, we're not going to do NDA warrants and warrantless searches and writs of assistance, we're not going to come take your guns and all that stuff that Obama wants to do with his pen. So, the second part we're doing now is we're rolling out CPT, or Community Preservation Teams. So we're basically putting together teams in the group where somebody does comms, you know, communications, where, you know, if the grid goes down, we're getting set up on ham radios. We got like 60 people set up. A guy's going to come out and teach the course. It's $20. You test, and then you take the test and you pass. You have no idea what you're doing, but you know what all the answers are to all the questions, so you take the test. And then the other guys that are real ham operators are going to start working with us regularly, like, you know, an hour or two a week. You know, at night we'll get on and talk to each other on the ham radio. That's just a for instance. There's guys that are going to specialize in transporting, guys that are specializing in, you know, food preparation and storage and all these kind of things, okay? Also, you know, a little bit on weapons too. We'll be out doing like some shooting at the range and stuff like that. This is to preserve your neighborhood, your house, okay? And so we want to replicate this in the communities. The idea being, I don't know if you guys saw the tornadoes in Indiana, and the FEMA trucks pulled up, and they're, no, we already prepared. We have everything up at the church. We've got a place to stay. We've all been storing food. We're fine. Just go. We don't need your help. And if we can tell the government we don't need their help more often, and more often, then it's going to start. I really want to encourage you. I know you got a lot. I did. I'm running back, picking up my kids. My wife's texting me, get home. The other two are making me pull my hair out right now. You know, but it doesn't matter what you win. Don't let that hold you back, because we swore in 300 people. Most of you were probably there at the Denison rally. You know, when we rallied against the SAFE Act. That mattered. That counted. If you put your hand up that day, if you said, yeah, I will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies, foreign and domestic, you know, if that means something to you, calm down, because we're going to help you be prepared in your own neighborhood. And the last thing is, there's a Great American Outdoor Festival. This is actually kind of on a lighter note. It's going on in Pennsylvania. We got a table there. There's going to be probably 500,000 people that are a captive and most likely sympathetic audience to get the word out to. But it's a nice time if you're into hunting, shooting, fishing, anything outdoor, camping. It's huge. It's at the Harrisburg Farm Complex. It's from the 1st to the 9th in Pennsylvania. And if any of you are oath keepers or are by then and you want to man the table, we'll get you a convention pass and you can come down there and help us sell some t-shirts and get the word out. That's February, yeah, it's coming up. It's from the 1st to the 9th. Okay? I love you guys.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up. Got a little late. I apologize. We had 2 months worth of stuff to go. Again, the Oath Keepers are a good crowd. Let me tell you, I've been to a couple of their meetings. You know, they know what they're doing, and you know, let's face it, if push comes to shove, we're going to want them on our side. We have a couple of other things. If you're interested, come on out to the bar, sit outside, and we'll finish the meeting out there, guys. Thank you. Have a good night.